All right, guys, now what we're going to do is we're going to go into AutoCAD and we're going to create a wall, a framed wall. This will be the core of the wall, the inside of the wall. This is what holds the wall together in a residence. Commercial buildings would be a little bit different, sometimes the same, but a lot of times different. They use steel mostly in commercial. Sometimes they use steel in houses. But this is the wall frame we're going to do, and it has one door and one window. Now, mainly we're doing this for familiarity purposes. Seldom would you actually be required to do a framing plan for a house that you design. It's not impossible. Sometimes you do. Sometimes for code reasons, you might have to provide a framing plan to to allow the inspector, the city inspector, to know what type of framing method you're using. Okay, so the framing methods vary. There are thousands of different ways to frame a wall. This is a little different than the framing method that you saw in the video. Okay, this is a little bit more basic, I guess you would say. The vertical members, the studs, that's what the vertical members are called, studs. I colored just white so that you could see them. Originally, they don't start out like that. I went in and shaded them white just so you could tell them apart. But just like we talked about in the, or like they talked about in the video, this is your top plate right here, or your double top plate. I think they had a couple other names they went by, like a cap plate, I believe was one of them. And this is your other plate, your other top plate. So this whole system is like a double top plate. And interior walls typically won't have two top plates like that. A lot of times they'll just have the single plate, but these would be exterior walls. The bottom is the sill plate or mud sill, bottom sill. It goes by a couple of different names. Then we got the vertical studs. We've got the cripples under the window. We've got cripples above the door and above the window. We also have trimmer studs on each side of the window and the door. We also have king studs. And then, of course, the rest of them are just regular studs. So let's go over how to do this framing plan. This is going to give you some good skills as far as using AutoCAD. Okay, so what I start with first is I start with a bottom line to represent my bottom plate. And just draw that line 20 feet long. It's perfectly fine. And then I'm going to do a series of offsets. First offset I'm going to do is going to be 8 feet. 8 feet is going to represent the very top of this wall. Or actually, not 8 feet, but let's go a little bit higher than that to allow for material space. So let's go 8.5 feet. We'll do that. We're going to go 8.5 feet. So we're going to offset 8.5 feet. Okay, and that's going to be the very top of the wall. Now I'm going to do another series of offsets that are going to consist of 1/2 inch offsets. So I'm going to hit the offset tool again, and I'm going to go 1.5 inch. I'm going to also offset the top plate twice to make up for the double top plate. Then I'm just going to offset the bottom plate once to make up for the bottom plate. Then I'm going to get out of the offset tool, and I'm going to click on the very top line, and then I'm going to click right here on the grip, drag it backwards 3.5 inches because another 2x4 is actually going to lay across that. That's how you would join the walls together. Now, some walls, this double top plate, the second portion of the top plate, would actually extend 3.5 inches over the end instead of being drawn back 3.5 inches over the end. All right, and then we just kind of close the ends. And I'm just in the drawing tool, and I'm just hitting the escape button to get out of the line, and then I'm going to hit the enter button to get back in the line tool. I can actually hit the enter button for both of them if I wanted to get out of it and to get back into it. Okay. All right, next thing we want to do is we want to position our windows and doors. So just depending on where it says we're supposed to put them, we start with the middle. So if we have a set of plans, it's going to kind of show us where the middle. And remember, back when we were dimensioning these things, we dimensioned the windows and doors all to the center, not the ends. We dimensioned them to the center. So let's just draw a line here. That's going to be the window. And we'll draw another line here. That's going to be, whoops, that's going to be the door. All right. Okay, so let's do the door first. Now the doors in this case is going to be 36 inches wide. That's a typical width of a front door. The door we're going to get from the building supply store measures 36 inches. But it's also got a frame that comes with it. And when we get that door, when we pick it up, it's going to tell us how big to make the hole, and it's called a rough size. Remember, I want you to write that down. Okay? Write that word down. Okay, it's going to be rough, or actually it's going to list it as a rough in size. Rough in size. And that's a little bit small. So rough in size, and just kind of write this definition below that. Rough in size is, it gives the member that you're going to install, the door, a little bit of extra space so you can move it around, make sure it's straight, make sure it doesn't get stuck. And in order to keep it in place, they'll use what we call shims, and little slivers of wood that they'll use to keep it in place. And they'll probably throw some nails or screws in it and stuff like that just to get it to stay in place. But they want it to be straight. They don't want it to just barely fit, because then what happens when the wood swells in the summertime, when there's a lot of heat and humidity, then it's going to be hard to open and close your doors. If you've ever been to a house that's like that, it's probably because for something related to that wasn't constructed properly. So we need to leave that space in there for swelling, and we also need to make sure it's straight, so we need to have some wiggle room. So what we're going to do, if it tells us the rough in size is 36, or no, I'm sorry, it tells us the door is 36 inches, it might tell us the rough in size is 38 inches or whatever it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset this line twice, once in each direction, and I'm going to do half of 38 inches, which is 19 inches. Okay, so I'm going to offset that 19 inches. Both ways. I can go ahead and get rid of the center line. I don't need it anymore. Okay, and I can actually go ahead and trim up and clean these lines up as well. So let's clean that one up, that, and that. We don't need lines going through the plates. Same thing on the bottom here. We'll just clean those off and then clean these right here. Okay, so that represents the actual opening of the door. Okay. Next thing I will do is put a header. Put the header in here. And the header needs to be 38 inches as well. So we're going to put a header. I'm going to do it like this. And there's several ways you can do this. So I'm going to start a line. And I'm going to go up a little bit higher. The door height has got to be 6 foot 8 inches. So I'm going to go up 6 foot 9 inches. Okay, give it that extra inch for some wiggle room. Okay, so 6 foot 9 inches. That's where the header is going to be. And then I'm going to offset that. We're going to use 2x6 headers. Okay, so it's a small house. We don't need that big of a header. And we're going to offset that. We're going to use 2x6s. So that means we're going to offset it 5.5 inches. That's the dimension we want, is the longest dimension. So 5.5 inches, and then we offset that. So now we have a header. And let's see, I was just thinking that 38, we need to put trimmers in here, but trimmers are going to make that hole a little bit smaller. And I just thought about this just now. So what I need to do is I need to offset these lines right here another 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. Okay, so this is correcting a mistake. And then I'm going to delete those lines because those are no longer any good. Okay, and I'm going to extend the header. So actually I offset that total offset, or that total width, is going to be more like 40 inches for a 36-inch door. That first offset we did anyway. Okay, so then I'm going to offset this again to make up for the thickness of the wood. Okay. So offset, and we're going to do 1.5 inches just like it is there. 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. All right, now I'm going to place some trimmers. So I'm going to go to a line tool. I can either offset this or I can just draw it. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, and what I do is I just come in here, find that corner and drag it before I click. I do not click yet. Type in 1.5 inches and then hit enter, and then that gives me 1.5 inches over is where I start my line. Okay, then that's my trimmer stud. That's the one that supports the header. And then I'm going to mirror that stud, that line just over here. Find the center of the door right there. Do not erase. Okay, so that's pretty much everything for the door. Only thing I'd have to do is put cripples, but I'm going to put my cripples in when I do my studs. All right, so if we end up here, we should end up with a little bit bigger than 36 inches. So I got 3 foot 2 inches. That leaves me that 2 inches of wiggle room when I put the door frame in there from the building supply store, and I'm able to get some wiggle room and some expansion space and all that. Okay, now we're going to do the window. Okay, so the window. Let's say I got a 34-inch window from the store and I'm going to install that. So I need to include a couple extra inches on each side to have some wiggle room, just like the door. And then plus I want to mark my king studs with this first offset. So I'm going to add 1.5 inches to that offset. So half of 34 is 17. Add 1.5 inches to that offset, and then I get 18.5. Okay, so I'm going to do an offset of 18.5 inches. And that's going to mark the inside of my king stud. Get rid of the center line. I don't need it. We can go ahead and clean these lines up. Okay, just click in there and get rid of all that. Okay, now before I actually go in and put a trimmer stud, well, I guess I could go ahead and put in a trimmer stud, and I'll kind of show you how I do this. So putting in my trimmer stud, I want my header's going to be the same height as this right here. So I'm going to just use that as a reference point, draw my header. Then I'm going to offset that header 5.5 inches. Okay, right there. Now I'm going to put my trimmers in there. Okay, so I'm going to find that corner and drag it over 1.5 inches, and I'm going to type 1.5 inches because that's how far I want to drag it over. And I'm going to go ahead and draw it down to the bottom for now. And then I'm going to mirror it over. Select the object, and then over here, no, do not erase. And the reason I'm doing that is because I need to do a seal, a window seal. Okay, my window seal, that's the bottom board that goes across the bottom of the window. I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to move up, and I'm going to type in 3 feet because that's how high I'm going to put the seal. And then I'm going to draw over to the side. I'm going to offset that down 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. All right, and then I'm going to do some trimming. I want to trim right here because the board doesn't actually go through there. And that's just how I do my windows. I put an extra trimmer underneath, okay? And we also need to offset our king stud 1.5 inches. So we'll offset these off that way. Okay, now that takes care of everything except for the cripples. Now, in order to do the cripples, I'm going to do those at the same time I do the studs. Okay, and I'm going to pause for just a moment. All right, now we're back and we're going to do the studs. Okay, to do the studs, I'm just going to start with one stud right over here at the side. Draw it from point to point, right inside of the top and bottom plates. I'm going to offset that 1.5 inches for now. Okay, and now I'm going to create an array. Okay, so I'm going to select all those, or both of those, just those 2 lines, the studs. Click on the array tool. It automatically goes into a default array mode. I want my rows just to be one row, okay, but my columns are going to increase. I'm going to come over here to where it says between, space between. The space between studs in this case are going to be 16 inches. 16 inch on center is what we typically do our wall framing with. Okay, so 16 inches on center. And then I'm going to drag this grip, this last grip out. This last grip will actually create more studs. I'm going to draw it all the way to the end, maybe just a little past the end like I have right now. And go ahead and click. And then I'm going to come back and clean it up. All right, so a couple of things I got to do. One is I got to select that array again like that and go to Home, go to the Home tab and click on Explode to take it out of that group mode. All right, and in here I got to be real careful. Some of these overlapping studs I want to take a real close look at before I delete them. Okay, that one was overlapping, so I deleted it. Let's see if there are any other overlapping ones, maybe right here. This one is an overlapping stud. Okay, right there. All right, now there are some other studs that are in the way. This stud right here, I'm just going to take it, select it, click the Move tool, select this as my base point, and then move it right over here and snap to that corner. Now I'm going to do some trimming. So I'll get my trim tool. And of course, there's not any studs right here in the header space. And there's not any studs right here in the window space either. Okay, and here in the bottom seal of the window, we cut those out too. So now we have our cripples and we got all of our studs. Coming over here, we'll clean this one up as well. Okay, so now we have all of our studs. We got our king studs. All windows have trimmers. They have king studs. They have headers. They have cripples. The window has a bottom seal, which is what it needs. I've got all my studs, which are located at 16 inches on center. I got my bottom plate, my sill plate, and then I've got my double top plate design up at the top. Okay, that's really all there is to wall framing. Now, again, this is just one style. There are many styles of wall framing, but this is the only one I want you to work with. And again, this will give you more practice using AutoCAD. So once you get through with this, go ahead and name it, save your file. See, save, and just call it your first name. My first name is Jeff, and then call it wall frame. Just like that, and you're good to go. And then submit that and you will get a grade. So it's really easy. Okay, just make sure you get some of those real basic components, the offsetting or the sizes of the lumber and everything just right. Okay, and then you're good. You don't have to go in and shade it. I just did that so you could see it and you could pick it all out from the black background. Okay, so that's all there is to wall framing.